Welcome back, everybody. We're going to be talking a little bit more about the Walther PDP today, which became one of my favorites almost instantly once I got it out on the range because it just flat out performed from that first pull of the trigger all the way through the last. Now, I have done a few things to this, like the mag well and mag extension, and of course, trigger. So I've obviously tried the factory trigger that comes on the original PDP. I've tried the Overwatch, and now I've had a good opportunity to get a good amount of rounds through the dynamic performance trigger from Walther directly. Now, I don't know if it's just me or if you've noticed as well, but with the PDP, the Performance Duty Pistol, Walther seems to love like 3- and 4-part names for everything that goes on this, from like the super terrain serration, dynamic performance trigger. They love those long 3-part names. And before we go any further, a huge shout to my Patreons, because the Patreon money purchased this trigger, so make sure you thank all of them in the comments. They're a huge support structure for the channel. So one of the best things about this Walther dynamic performance trigger is it's a factory part and it just bangs. Before we get into the details of the trigger, there's something I want to make very clear. So I am in no way affiliated with Walther. I bought the PDP myself at the local shop. I bought the trigger in there. I don't get paid by them. I'm not sponsored by them, none of that stuff. And I want to make that clear because I really like this thing, and quite honestly, I get excited out there with it on the range. So if it seems that I'm really digging it and I'm really excited about it, it's because I am, not because I have any affiliation with Walther at all. And for all those but Maha bore axis problem people out there, here's a little something to look at. Just a little jab at those that like to say, well, you can't really run it because it's got a high bore axis. So dare I say, I can run the PDP probably faster than most of my comped Glocks, minus the 34, like the P10F or something like that. And that just may have to do with the angles and the fact that it fits me so well. All right, so into this factory trigger, this PDP Performance Duty trigger right there. Give you that quick look. From the factory, we're gonna talk about the performance on this thing, go over all the things you wanna know about it, so you can understand what you're getting into if you decide to go with the factory Walther trigger, because factory parts do mean something as compared to the aftermarket. And make sure that you all get subbed up and turn that notification on, because that is a huge help to the channel. We're gonna go ahead and get into all this trigger right now. All right, so here we go again. I know you love these up close and personal moments just like I do. This is the Walther Dynamic Performance longest name trigger ever right there. Let's take a good overall look at this thing. You can see we have a nice flat face on here. That bladed trigger shoe safety does go all the way flush, which I'm a huge fan of. And then we've got a nice little kind of captured edge right there at the bottom. You can just barely see where it just hooks your finger in just right, because I like to ride my finger as low as possible on the trigger because that's using leverage. You're gonna have that little Walther logo in there, nicely chamfered off edges on the side of that trigger shoe on both sides, obviously all the way around. Good clean look here, and I kind of like the design of the blade safety. You see there's some holes in it. Solid clean look to it. So let's go ahead and do some brakes here. We'll have a nice engagement, very firm on that trigger shoe safety. There's our wall, and it just breaks. There's our reset. It's right there. So it's it almost kind of throws your finger off. Very, very positive, and I'm a huge fan of that because you can run it faster. So wall, brake. All right, so you can see it's quite a difference from a factory style trigger, but still manageable out there. So let's go ahead and do some of those trigger pulls right now. Sorry about that, had a little light issue there. So we'll go ahead and use this. Like I said, viewer sent this in, that was awesome of them. We're gonna do 3 pulls. Let's go ahead and get started right here. We're gonna go real low on this first one. All right, so that comes 4 pounds, 4 ounces. pretty good. Go ahead and enter that. All right, go a tiny bit higher on that trigger shoe this time, maybe right here. All right, that actually went down. I might have pulled a little faster on it. That can affect the digital gauge sometime. We'll edit that in there. We'll do one more and we'll kind of go a little higher. It's about right there. And that one went to 3.5. So I'm gonna do a fourth one here just because that first one was a little bit odd. So I'm gonna go back down low on the shoe. I might have been rubbing that trigger guard. No, I think I'm stuttering. Let's try it one more time. I think there's a little stutter in that gauge and that's why it's doing that. I'm dragging across that trigger guard. So there we go. I must have been hitting that rubberized part on the trigger guard or something, but so that one was 3 0 ounces, 0.6. So we're gonna have an overall right there of 3 pounds and 15.6 ounces for that trigger. That is very solid for a factory style trigger. And again, like you saw, it will have to do a little bit with where you put your finger up there on that trigger. Right, I know some of you were probably staring at them. So these are the Floyd's custom shop magwell and extensions. Love those things. I'll have a video on these real soon, but let's go ahead and talk about the costs, concerns, and benefits of this dynamic performance trigger. That is solid stuff. So what are our benefits, costs, and concerns going with the dynamic performance trigger from Walther, being that it's a factory part? So the benefits of this trigger are it's going to be drastically better than factory, even though the factory trigger on the Walther is really solid. So you're going to get a drastically better feeling trigger with that flat face. At least I think the flat face is better. Reduced take up, reduced over travel, and a reduced reset. That is pretty awesome coming out of a factory trigger, the way that this one actually runs out there. And again, the factory part means safety. There's that confidence in it because this trigger design has been out for some time in the other models, so you know you can be confident in it out there. The brake on this trigger is still very tactile, clean, and solid. If you don't know what that means, basically you get to that wall, which is very well defined. You can hear that brake, you can feel it. You get that audible reset, and it is solid. The fact that they were able to get that clean of a brake, that solid of a wall out of a trigger that's pulling at this weight is good. Now, if you don't know what I mean when I say the wall of the trigger, is basically once you get the take up out of there, it stops. So that's right before the trigger breaks. There is zero creep and it just breaks. That's called the wall. So the more defined of a wall, the better, at least for me. Some people kind of like a little mush there. I don't. I want to get to the wall and I want that trigger to break right where it's going to break consistently every single time with zero creep in it. Some people like that, some people don't. And that's really going to be up to you to determine what your style is. For me, solid, clean, crisp right there. And that comes from like the 1911 style of trigger, which I'm a huge fan of. Now, probably the biggest benefit here, this is a factory trigger. So this comes from Walther, it's made by Walther, it's been tested, we know it's reliable, it's been in several other of their models as far as the overall trigger design goes. Well, that's a huge confidence builder because honestly, with other companies, even though there are several trigger companies out there I trust, Overwatch, Apex, and those, Walther puts a lot of rounds through things when they test them like every other manufacturer. So there's a confidence builder there. Not only that, factory installed, you have a complete factory pistol still with no aftermarket parts in it. Now, when it comes to concerns, I have legitimately zero with this. Like I said, factory part, as long as it's installed properly by a licensed professional, gunsmith, whatever it is out there, I've got no issues with this thing at all. And I know some people are a little bit weary of triggers, whether they're factory or aftermarket, because of one reason or another. That's going to be a decision that's completely up to you. I have no problem carrying this trigger around day to day. The one thing I will say is you need to have a certain level of experience and training, and then obviously train with any new part you put in a pistol, because this is going to be drastically different than the standard factory trigger, and you need to test it out. And you need to make a decision for yourself if the pull weight, the shortened reset and take up is gonna be right for you, depending on whether you're carrying this for EDC or just using it for competition. All right, now what is the cost for that beautiful looking flat face trigger right there? And this is where it gets tricky. So this thing is listed at an MSRP of $179 off the top of my head. That's what I paid for it. Like I said, I bought it with my own money. The problem is they're like epically, eternally out of stock. So I just happened to go onto the Walther website time after time after time, and I saw them in stock one day. As of filming this video, they're all out of stock again, and I haven't seen them back in stock since I bought this one right here. So even though it is an amazing trigger, it is a factory part, it's tough to get them right now, and you can't back order them. And it's probably because, and this is just an assumption for me, they're making the PDP Pro SD version, which comes with the magwell, the sights, a threaded barrel, and that dynamic performance trigger. And they're selling those from the factory now. I'm still trying to get one. I haven't seen one in a store, and I get no love from Walther right now. So one could assume that since they're putting these triggers in factory setups now, that's probably why you can't get them. And I don't think that any other company is able to sell those triggers. I think Walther is only allowing themselves to sell them. So we're kind of stuck at their whim. But with everything that's gone on, shortages in supplies, the supply chain, everything over the past couple years, it's kind of understandable. But the consumer in me wants my parts.
The meatloaf! We want it now!
Now, when it comes down to, is this trigger worth the money? I have to say, for me, every single penny. Even though the Walther PDP has one of the best out-of-the-box triggers, in my opinion, this trigger takes it to the next level. So whether you're carrying this thing every day, using it for competition, hands down, this trigger is solid. And that factory part, and I know I've gone back to that a couple times, it just breeds confidence. All right, well, that is what I have for you all today on the Walther PDP. I am really curious to know, have you got a chance to hold one or run one out on the range? And what are your thoughts on the dynamic performance trigger? Me personally, just put it in all of them from now on. It's better. It's really, really good. And I think everybody out there that bought a PDP would probably appreciate it and even pay a little bit more to just get that trigger in there. Or you can buy the PDP Pro SD version if you can find one. Make sure you sub up down there and turn those notifications on. That is a huge help to the channel. And of course, comments, likes, all that good stuff. Huge thank you again to my Patreons. Patreon money bought this trigger, and then TruShot supplied most of the ammo for all of this. They are the main ammo sponsor for the channel going forward. Big thanks to them, and a massive thanks to the Patreons. More good stuff for you guys coming real soon. Get on there on the range, have some fun. Remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. I will see you all on the next one.